Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Big Time Wrestling weekly, bi-weekly, semi-weekly, monthly, yearly, decadely podcast. Whenever we feel like making it. It's been a while, but we are back. Today, my name is Jade Lowe, and I'm joined by Ryan Roberts. Our normal co-host, Brandon Mackey, couldn't be with us today. We'll address that in a bit. But obviously, Ryan, a lot to talk about with Locked and Loaded and in-ring action and that kind of jazz. But obviously, whenever real life hits in this line of work with e-fetting that's supposed to be such a distraction from reality, when real life hits, it can really suck, and it hit us hard this week as Vixen, known by her birth name as Kathy Dietrich, was lost this week, passed away. BTW has shown tributes to her on Prime Time and Devastation and all across the spectrum, but Vixen, when she came in with Blood Money at the time, who, you look and see RJ Colbert and Travis Johnson are now champions in their respective brands. So Blood Money really has made a huge impact on BTW. Vixen was no different. She was a women's champion in her last match in BTW at Unholy Redemption 2 years ago. She won the World Women's Championship and then walked out on top. And then, unfortunately, that was the last we got the chance to see of her. So, Kathy Dietrich, otherwise known as the former women's champion, Vixen, passes away this week, born 1978, and we lost her this week. So, obviously, Ryan, again, it really sucks when real life has to hit us this hard and something that's supposed to distract us from reality. But this week, we dedicate the podcast to the memory of Vixen.
Yeah, it's always really sad whenever you lose someone, especially someone who impacted so many people's lives. I've just heard all across the board just so many people saying, how much they loved her and how she just had a impact in their life, not only in real life, but also, of course, in the e-fetting world. But it's just, like you said, it's always kind of a sore note and kind of a sour note and always a down note. But at the same time, she was a hard worker, so in her spirit, let's keep going strong.
Yes, sir. So we move on with this week's action. Again, earlier, it sucks because Brandon can't be with us tonight, but me and Ron are here to call the action. However, we don't want people to forget about Brandon at all. He's our best friend and our compatriot in this podcast world, and we just don't want Brandon to think we forgot about him. So me and Ron have put together a little montage here. We are going to honor Brandon and our friendship by singing "Oh Canada," which is the theme or the ballad or whatever they call it of Canada. The anthem, that's what I'm trying to think of. Okay, so Ryan, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
So, on my count, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh,
Canada, our home and native land. It always snows, and we all have hair on our heads.
There's no bacon there, it's all Canadian, it's just ham.
Donald Trump is not here. Oh, Canada, we have really malty beer. Yay.
And something about syrup.
Something about syrup and bears. And okay, so that was, Brandon, we miss you, buddy, and we're sorry you couldn't be here. Alright, so let's move on to this week's action, and let's start from the bottom. No, offense intended, but Next Gen really is. That's where you start and you work your way to the top. So, this week on Next Gen, a rundown of this week's action. Dean Chard beat a man called Unknown Danger in a grudge match. Rebellion star Theodorus Taylor came down for a one-night only appearance and defeated Big Country. Death Row beat Insanity to retain the Next Gen Tag Team Championships. Sphinx Payne beat Cody Fox and became the first global champion. Congratulations to Sphinx Payne. Ashanti Lewis beat Taya Monroe and Tori Hale to become the first Next Gen Women's Champion. And in the main event of Clash of the Titans this week, the pay-per-view special, the undefeated Jordan Cash defeated Mark Esbar to become the new Next Gen Champion. So Jordan Cash is the new Next Gen Champion. Ashanti Lewis is the first ever Next Gen Women's Champion. And Sphinx Payne is the first ever Next Gen Global Champion. So a big night for those three at Clash of the Titans this week.
That's right. It's always nice when there's a title change. It's always a big step to get that gold around your waist, over your shoulder, however you feel like carrying it. And that's just, like you said, next gen, it's the beginning. So hopefully this is the beginning of a long and prosperous career for all of these competitors.
Yeah, I've seen up close the work of Jordan Cash on Primetime. He's got some good talent. Got some things to iron out, but when he does, he could definitely become a great star on Devastation or Rebellion. It's great to see in a time when the women are really making their impact on Devastation. Obviously, some of them are going to have to start on Next Gen. There's just not enough room for all the women that want to join BTW to come straight up to the main roster. So it's great to see them getting their shine. It's good to see Next Gen get a mid-card championship too. I've always thought they should have one. Even back in New Rising, they just had the New Rising title, the tag team title. They didn't really ever have much of a mid-card title. And I think that's going to give more room to shine for all the competitors on Next Gen. So it'll be good to see more people get an opportunity to show their worth and get promoted hopefully up to the big leagues, or what we call the big leagues. Speaking of the big leagues, we move on to Rebellion, in the most recent action that we know of. And again, another show may have been released by the time you see this, but again, we can only speak at the time of recording on the shows that we have seen up to this point. So the most recent action that we know of, Billy Matthews defeated 3 unknown men in a 3-on-1 elimination match, showing a lot of momentum as he built towards his match with Mike Mayhem. Ice Fang defeated Christopher Andrews after a masked man screwed over Christopher Andrews and cost him the victory. Rebel defeated Chris Mullins Jr., after which the con man fired Mullins. Mullins has had a lot of backstage issues with a lot of backstage personnel. Mullins was fired, and then he suspended Christopher Andrews after he put his hands on Mullins, which was obviously against the rules that con man had laid out. After then, the Dark Savior and Ralph Marks teamed up to defeat the team of Ace and Deuce. After the match, Damien appeared to have shown an alliance with Ace and Deuce, so looks like that team gets a little bit stronger this week. Now, Ryan, I should also mention that all through the show, Dark Savior seemed to be physically and visibly worried that somebody was going to side with him, so he actually had called an old buddy of his to come side with him and Ralph. The rumors are that it will be James Mercer, but that didn't turn out. So there's a lot going on Rebellion, and that's kind of whenever Brent Booker is involved, obviously things are always going to get a little bit crazy. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in Rebellion. Obviously Billy Matthews and Mike Mayhem is kind of stealing the show. There is an interesting dynamic with Andrews and Mullins not touching each other until their match at King of the Hill. That's kind of all fallen apart with the firing of Mullins. We've got the big homies over there, Murphy and Ellis. Murphy and Mikey Nitro were going at each other's throats. And then obviously we've got the Dark Savior trying to seek help against Ace and Deuce in that hardcore division. So there's a lot going on, Ryan, but what's sticking out to you so far in Rebellion?
One big thing is whenever Damien was there siding with Ace and Deuce, I mean, like, that's just, more their arsenal. That's just more power to them. And it's really interesting to see Dark Savior almost in a vulnerable position, if you will. But it's just because, I mean, you know how dominant Dark Savior used to be, and seeing him like this, it almost goes to show that how powerful Ace and Deuce and now with Damien could actually be. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, it is. I think that the big thing that's stealing the show, and I mentioned this earlier, is actually Mike Mayhem and Billy Matthews. And I want to talk about Mayhem for just a minute because we haven't really had a podcast since Mike Mayhem has come to his own. He is the hybrid champion on Rebellion. He became the hybrid champion. He then defeated the middleweight hardcore champion, Ace, and then combined those titles. He only has one loss on his record, and that's to DJK, and that was with interference of Travis Johnson. So let's talk about that for a bit, because we haven't really had anyone that's really come into BTW with such a storm and with such fanfare in a very long time, especially someone who skipped New Rising / Next Gen and just came right up to the main roster. So what are your thoughts on the rising of Mike Mayhem, and where do you think his ceiling is?
There's not a ceiling, first off, so don't even ask that question. If there was, he broke it about 3 months ago. Mike Mayhem, he's just like you said. There's only one loss on his record, and it wasn't even necessarily a clean one. And obviously, since it was due to DJK, you can see why it wasn't clean. So, like I said, there's just no ceiling for this guy. I don't see where he's going to stop. I just know he's going to keep climbing and he's going to keep pushing himself. And like you said, the fanfare behind him is, wow, it's insane. Like, I've never seen someone come in with so much fanfare, so much passion, and so much momentum into BTW in a long time, and I would almost go as far as saying an ever.
Yeah, and he stormed up the ranks really, really quickly. I would probably, if I had to compare it, I would probably compare it with Jason Silva, because he took the new rising step, and that's kind of the advantage that Mike Mayhem has when you're comparing, because Mike Mayhem came straight to the main roster, but both of them came up, started beating big names right away. Mike Mayhem was undefeated for a while. Some people still think that he is undefeated. Let's also talk about someone on Rebellion who has been working for a long time to get their shine and has gotten it recently in RJ Colbert. For a very, very long time, he was under the shadow kind of Travis Johnson in the tag team division. On Devastation, everyone just kind of assumed that Travis was the leader and RJ was kind of the sidekick. And then even as their solo careers progressed, Travis became an internet champion. And then now he's beating big names week after week. And RJ went out there, showed no fear a couple of weeks ago, and he defeated, the former BTW middleweight champion, Gabriel Ortiz. He then went out on Primetime this week and he defeated Travis Johnson in one-on-one action on Primetime. So while we're talking about ascensions, I mean, how impressed are you with RJ Colbert getting to where he is now?
It's always nice to see someone break off from a tag team and really make a name for their own, because it's one thing to have a dominant tag team, and then it's another thing to actually go out there by yourself and do it on your own. And seeing him be able to go out there, make a name for himself and say, listen, I wasn't a lackey, I wasn't a sidekick, and I'm going to prove that I can be my own man. I'm honestly loving it right now.
He's definitely impressing a lot of people. This last thing with Xavier looking for additional help, if the rumors are true and it is John Mercer, I mean, I'm gonna mark the shit out. I think the peak of John Mercer may have been a little bit before you came into BTW, Ryan. But Mercer, this guy, he was indescribable, because he went out there, he didn't have an ego. He never asked to be handed anything. He just went out there, he did his thing. He had a super interesting character and persona that he put on when he was cutting his promos. And in the ring, he was just one of the most violent men in the history of BTW. And again, rumors are rumors after all, for a reason. We have no proof that it's going to be John Mercier coming out to help Xavier. But I mean, who do you think it could be? If it's not Mercer, who do you think we might see come out and help Xavier and Ralph against Ace and Deuce and Damien?
I got no clue. There's no telling. Dark Savior is one of the most uncanny and wild competitors in BTW, and I honestly don't know who he could have up his sleeve. It could be literally just about anyone that he hasn't killed.
Yeah, and the term here, the pertinent term is that Dark Savior's calling this mystery person his best friend. I didn't even know Dark Savior had any friends.
He does?
Apparently. Kind of like being friends with a turd. But, I guess we'll see. We'll just have, as always with Rebellion and with any show that's booked by, Brent Booker himself, we just kind of have to wait and see. So now
maybe it's Brent Booker.
It might be. I mean, for all we know, it very well could be Brent Booker himself. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. So before we move on to, Locked and Loaded and Devastation this week, I do want to talk about Primetime, just for a little bit. By the way, our Primetime discussion is brought to you by, BTW Productions' newest movie, Moving Days, starring Jason Silva and DJK. It'll be released straight to DVD. It's nowhere near good enough to be in theaters, but it'll be released straight to DVD in about 2 to 3 weeks, whenever we feel like it.
That's right.
So yeah, on Primetime, again, we mentioned some of that action. Primetime's been a little weird lately. Jade Rivers was fired from Devastation. All of a sudden, Eric King gets quote unquote mysteriously sick, and Jade Rivers has his show back on Primetime. And he has kind of been using the monster, Red Rum Cativo, as his own pet. And we've never seen Red Rum Cativo be controlled by anyone, but he has. Jade Rivers sent him out to fight Zach Murphy last week, This week he was in the main event fighting Jackson Ellis in Hell in a Cell. We'll get to that in a moment. To start off the night, it was tag team champions versus tag team champions. And again, Primetime was done before Locked and Loaded, so we'll get to the changes in a moment. But in the end, it was Mikey Nitro being laid out by a masked man who we deeply suspect was Zach Murphy. And then Will Wagner got the winning pin for the Icons and Assholes. We discussed this match earlier. RJ Colbert and Travis Johnson, they put on a clinic as everyone suspected they would. But then Beverly was distracting at the ring for Travis Johnson. He was concerned with her safety, and RJ capitalized and then pinned him. And then in that main event, in the Hell in a Cell match, Red Rum Kativo set himself on fucking fire and tackled Jackson Ellis through the cell. We thought that was as crazy as it would get, but it turned out it would not be. Zach Murphy came out to help beat down Red Rum against Jade Rivers' orders. The Machine Gun Club came out to try and get a surprise attack on the big homies, and then Red Rum Kativo pretty much killed all of them. And then at the end of the show, again, Jade Rivers having a calming effect on Red Rum, touching his chest, and Red Rum disappeared. So, all in all, your opinions of the show, Ryan, and then what the hell is going on with the relationship between Jade Rivers and Red Rum?
From top to bottom, Primetime delivers once again as one of the best shows in BTW, because it's cross-brand. You never know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, where it's going to happen. And like you said, I mean, good night, Red Rum Kativo. Nice to see you back, but not nice if you're his opponent. This whole dynamic of Red Rum and Jade Rivers has me scratching my head like maybe Jade Rivers found like his old dagger or his old teddy bear or something. Isn't he a circus clown or was? I don't
Nobody
even know.
Knows.
Red Rum is just scary, and I hate talking about him because I think he's going to show up. Just no thank you.
Yeah.
But Red Rum is crazy. He's insane. And Jade Rivers has found some way to control him. And that's like having a nuclear bomb at the tip of your fingertips.
Hey, Ryan, are those eyeballs peeking over your window right now?
Don't do this to me.
I think there might be. But yeah, so it'll be really interesting to say. I was super impressed with Travis Johnson and RJ Colbert. It's great when a match tells a story, and you could tell when they got the crowd chanting for Vixen at the beginning of the fight. You could really tell that those two were emotionally charged going into that fight, and it was emotional. It was kind of hard to watch at times because you knew what they were fighting with on their minds and on their hearts. But ultimately it might have been the match of the night. So now we move on to the results for Locked and Loaded. And let me just get those pulled up real quick. I seem to have lost them. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about Locked and Loaded. Obviously there was a pre-show in which Ralph Swagger defeated Jericho Cross. There was then, obviously the 10-bell salute we discussed in the honor of Vixen. In the opening match, Ariana Lux and Faith Kennedy fought to a draw. It was then that RX defeated the Icons and Assholes to become the new World Tag Team Champions. Very interestingly in this match, Jay Blaze walked out before he could be tagged in for the Icons and Assholes, basically turning his back on Will Wagner and Ben Anderson. RX dedicated that match to Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park, who lost his life to suicide last week as well. We'll talk more about Jay Blaze here in just a little bit. After that, it was the one and only Jason Masterson and General Spike in a Weapons of Mass Destruction match. Spike got the advantage and curb stomped Masterson onto the apron, knocking him out, and then defeated Jason Masterson. We'll talk more about the approach that Masterson seems to be taking with Spike in a bit as well. After that, it was a scene in which Ben Anderson went looking for Jay Blaze backstage, but Jay escaped in his car without explaining his actions. After that, Travis Johnson retained the Internet Championship against Anarchist. He used Vixen's old finisher, the Decapitator, and came out to Vixen's theme song in that match as well. So a good tribute there. It was then a much anticipated last man standing match for the International Championship for Mr. Fresh and the King of Fear. Mr. Fresh did come out on top to retain the International Championship, thanks to a surprise return by RJ Grimm, who returned from under the ring and chokeslammed the King of Fear, Reckless, and Lucius Freeman of the Freeman Force. Ralph Swagger then had a confrontation with the returning Antonio Suarez backstage. In a match dedicated Desmond's memory, misbehavior defeated Sophie Schreiber and kicked her pretty much out of the company, and retained the women's championship after hitting her with one of Vixen's old finishing moves, the Red Death. And then in the main event, this was probably the most anticipated match. This might have been the single most anticipated championship match since the 5-star match way back in Annual Assault of 2 years ago. DJK, TJ Shadows, Jason Silva, and Desmond fought in a 4-way match for the new Devastation World Heavyweight Championship. And Desmond, after the huge year that he has, he finally cashes in on all of the momentum that he is deserved, winning the King of Primetime, main eventing the Grand Showcase, winning the International Championship. That all culminates, and he finally wins the World Championship at the end of Locked and Loaded. So we're going to add on Devastation to this and talk about everything else in a moment. But first, Ryan, the theme of the show seems to be Ascensions. Let's go ahead and take a moment to reflect on Desmond finally capturing the World Championship at Locked and Loaded.
Wow, is all I can say. Desmond, he's earned this. This was never once a handout. This was never once anyone helping him. This was him going out, making a name for himself, and saying, I'm going to do better than everybody else. He stole the show at Grand Showcase, Jason Silva. He had an amazing feud, and he winning that international title and just climbing the ranks and not giving in. Who did he beat for the Fatal Four-Way for the Devastation Goes Extreme?
Masterson, Cross, and Mr. Fresh, I believe.
That's what it was, yeah. Beating names like that to even qualify for this, Desmond was punching his ticket, and he knew. He never once looked around and said, oh, what about this guy, what about that guy? He had his eyes locked and loaded on that World Heavyweight Championship because he knew that brand new title. He knew that is what he needed. And finally, the culmination of Desmond as this world champion. Honestly, it was a feel-good moment for everyone, I think, except for, probably someone like DJK and Travis Johnson. But it was a feel-good moment, and it was just well-deserved. Desmond, congratulations.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. This whole year, I think at this point, Desmond has to be the front runner for, assuming the BTW awards return at the end of this year. I think Desmond has to be the front runner for Superstar of the Year right now. Right? There's not really anybody. He won the King of Primetime, right? He went out there and did that. He came within 5 seconds of defeating Jason Silva for the BTW championship. He became an internet champion. He survived a feud with DJK and Travis Johnson. And then he came out, he did his thing, he overcame 3 of the greatest performers on Devastation, and now he's the World Heavyweight Champion. So, hats off to Desmond, the World Heavyweight Champion. We then learned on Devastation, though, that his next challenge is not going to be any easier. Devastation kicked off with a battle royal with every man on Devastation competing for the next shot at the World Heavyweight Championship. It would come down to what would appear to be the King of Fear and Jay Blaze after a long, grueling battle royal. And then right when Jay Blaze thought he had it won, Will Wagner ran in behind him and threw Jay Blaze over. So Will Wagner's the new number 1 contender. We're going to talk about that here more in just a little bit. But long story short for the moment is that Desmond's road does not get any easier from here on out. The rest of the show was women's only, in memory of Vixen, obviously. So we move on to match number 2 was Riley Summers versus the returning Lacey Mist. Before the match could even begin, though, Lacey attacked Riley Summers as she was making her entrance. Lacey continued this beating until the referees and trainers came in to separate the two. So unfortunately, no match there. There was then a backstage segment. Lucius Freeman was backstage trying to calm down the King of Fear, who wanted RJ Grimm really, really badly. Reckless was there to try and help out as well. RJ Grimm then showed up. King of Fear rushed at him, but he was held back by the other members of the Freeman force. RJ Grimm, after that, will go one-on-one with Reckless next week. The next scheduled match was Lexi Love versus Haley Storm. Bunny Power ran wild in St. Louis, and Lexi got the big win over Haley with an LKO in a 7-minute match. Backstage, DJK and Travis Johnson were fuming over the results of the Battle Royal and the pay-per-view. DJK said he refused for his legacy to be tarnished because of 2 losses, said that the dynasty will not be a failure. Travis said that the World Heavyweight Championship didn't matter because the dynasty holds the most prestigious title on Devastation, the Internet Championship. Mr. Fresh overheard that, took exception. Obviously, he thinks his International Championship is the most prestigious title on the brand. They got into a fight, Travis Johnson and Mr. Fresh. DJK stepped in the middle. Anarchist then ran into the fray. Travis was ready to fight him. It was just a big mess. So basically, Anarchist went to check on Mr. Fresh after that 2-on-1 assault. So it looks like there might be sort of a rivalry brewing between the 2 champions. After that, Tara Shadows versus Jade Wilson. Tara showed her prominence in a big win over Wilson. Tara then said on the mic that she dedicated her win to Vixen, as most people did this week. And then we had a segment backstage. RX came out celebrating their title, told the crowd they were, very happy to be the tag team champions. At that moment, the hype train came out. Jason Silva and TJ Shadows. Choo choo! After they lost in the 4-way match, it looks like they've rededicated themselves to the tag team division. Looks like they won a match between the 2 most popular tag teams in BTW. No one can really argue that. Their challenge was accepted, but not at Devastation. It will be at Heat Wave in Miami. The BTW World Tag Team Championship match has been set. Regeneration X versus the Hype Train. So that's going to be a really cool contest. I'm looking forward to that. The next match, it was Faith Kennedy and Ariana Lux versus Nikita and Big Bertha. Who the fuck is Big Bertha? I didn't even know we had someone in the company named Big Bertha.
Yes.
Despite arguing for pretty much the entire match, Ariana and Faith pulled together and got the win after Faith hit the F-bomb on Big Bertha. That's my favorite finishing move in BTW, by the way. So then there was a segment involving Jay Blaze. He came out to the ring and tried to explain why he betrayed the icons and assholes at Locked and Loaded. Said he did it because he was tired of living in the shadow of the others and wanted to be on his own for once. He said costing Ben and Will the titles was the only way he saw in his eyes to redeem himself. Jay was then confronted by DC's Amcham, who said that as much as Jay appeared to want forgiveness from the fans, he was not going to get it from him. And then it looks like we have a confrontation headed our way of Jay Blaze versus DC's Amcham. In the backstage area, General Spike and Jason Masterson, in a very, very brief but intense stare down, seem to agree that this thing between those 2 isn't over. So we'll see how that progresses as we head towards Heatwave. In the main event, Misbehavior had an open challenge for the BTW Women's title. She waited patiently, but was shocked to see Pandora Thorne return to BTW and come out to accept her challenge. They fought for almost 20 minutes, but when Behavior locked in the lesson learned, ready to make Pandora tap out, Ariana Lux ran into the match and hit Behavior with a Shining Wizard to cause a disqualification. This has led to a scheduled 4-way match for the Women's Championship at Heatwave. Faith Kennedy, Ariana Lux, Misbehavior, and Pandora Thorne. So, again, a lot happening on Devastation with the women and with a bunch of backstage segments. So what's sticking out to you right now with everything going on Devastation right now?
Okay, yeah, let's just, give me a billboard and let me write on it for a little bit. Oh, crap. One thing I do want to point out is King of Fear. Yes, he might have lost at Locked and Loaded, but don't sleep on King of Fear. I like what he does, I like where he's going, and I like his momentum. I think King of Fear, we need to keep an eye on him. Let's keep an eye on King of Fear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been an international champion. He had that shot at the BTW championship before TB2 took it over to Rebellion, so it's not like he's a stranger to big time matches. And King of Fear, he's shown us a lot, in what is really his second stint in BTW. So then, yeah, I mean, obviously we got the 4-way women's match. We got a question about that later. We'll talk about it. The Hype Train, I love to see the Hype Train back together. Those 2 are super entertaining.
I gotta say something about the Hype Train.
Let's
just, time out. Let's I gotta throw this one out here.
Sure.
The Hype Train, the 2 people in it were in a match in the main event for a brand new World Heavyweight Championship. In this match, they did go blow for blow. Jason Silva throw a freaking fireball in TJ Shadow's face. Do not let that skip. Do not skip over that. And the next night, what do? They come out and they're still a tag team. They are still together. If you can go to war with someone and then come out on the other side standing side by side with them, that's a tag team.
Oh, for sure. And that's what made it all the more impressive that they came out and were willing to still be tag team partner. I think they just realized that they're going to accomplish a lot more together than they are apart. Especially when neither one was able to come out victorious in the opening battle royal. I think they realized that their next best step was to try and recapture their tag team gold. It's going to be a tough road against Regeneration X. Normally the Hype Train has the Hype Train usually has the full advantage in crowd support. This time it's pretty much going to be split, so it'll be interesting to see, how that goes. All in all, everything going on in Devastation, there's a lot of, gold going around, but I think the most personal and intense rivalry that we have going on, and again, for reasons people might think I'm being biased, but I think that the most intense and personal rivalry we have going on right now is Spike versus Jason Masterson. Especially now, it's 1-1. Really, it's at this point, I think everyone knows that we're probably at a best out of 3 situation with these two. And I think we're going to have a follow-up match at Heat Wave here. And like Masterson said in his promo, the winner of this rivalry could end up taking a lot of momentum even towards a World Heavyweight Championship opportunity. General Spike beating Jason Masterson seems to have woken something up in him, just like Masterson woke something up in Spike in beating him. So I think now the interesting part is that both men will be at 100% at Heat Wave of who they are. And then now we're really going to see at Heat Wave, which is super appropriate because it's like the second biggest pay-per-view of the year, you're going to see 100% of Spike versus 100% of Jason Masterson in one way or the other. And I think that's going to be super fun to watch.
I think honestly that is one feud, and once again, personal reasons, you can screw off whatever, you sweaty, filthy mark. But what? So wank off. But anyways, no, Masterson versus Spike, like you said at the beginning, it was kind of like even Masterson, just kind of was treating Spike kind of like that annoying fly, get away from me, I'm through with you, I had my victory, go away. And now Spike has come back and literally stomped his image into Jason Masterson's brain. And now Masterson realizes that Spike wants a piece of him and that he needs to turn around and get a piece of Spike. And that's honestly, it's turning very, very personal, very, very quickly, and I cannot wait to see it. I would also like to bring up another angle. I would like to bring up Jay Blaze. What is going on with him exactly? Where is this leading? I know it's been announced that Jay Blaze versus DC Zamcham, but what is Jay Blaze trying to prove out of this exactly? What's your opinion?
So I can kind of understand where he's coming from, right? Because you look into the career of Jay Blaze and you see what he's accomplished in other companies, and he's so well respected for his solo accomplishments in other companies. Definitely. And then you look at what he's accomplished in BTW. He was the new Rising Champion. Great. Awesome. But then he came up and he was known for several months as not only as Dave Shirai's tag team partner, but also as a member of Jason Masterson's Horsemen, right? Exactly. He goes solo. It doesn't pan out for him very well. He leaves, he comes back, and now he finds himself moderately successful again, but once again, he sees himself labeled as Will Wagner and Ben Anderson's manager. He's sick of it, and he wants BTW to know that Jay Blaze, on his own, without a partner, without a team, without a faction, is one of the greatest performers in BTW. Now, did he have to go out and cost the Icons and Assholes the tag team titles to do it? I guess that is for your own judgment to make.
Yes.
But I think he did the right thing in going out on his own, and now if he wanted a chance to prove himself, boy, how does he have it? He's got DC's Amcham, so if he wants an opportunity to prove himself, he's definitely got the chance here.
Jay Blaze, there's been a lot of attention surrounding him, like you said, with INA and with so many others, and now that DC's Amcham has stepped up, it's time for Jay Blaze to either put up or shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's real quickly touch on the discussion that was had between Travis Johnson and Mr. Fresh, because that's a super interesting conversation to be had with the Internet Championship and the International Championship. So whose side are you on as far as the basis of the conversation of the title that's most prestigious, just between those two. Which one are you going with?
Travis Johnson is a worker. Travis Johnson is strong, powerful, and just a dominant performer. But Mr. Fresh has the international title, and you look back at the history of that international title. It might be for personal reasons or whatever, but I've always loved the international title. I think I don't know.
So here's a fun way to put it. Let's take the 5 best internet champions of all time and the 5 best international champions of all time, put them in a 5-on-5 match and see who wins. So let's take the internet title. I think that you have Carson Callahan. He was the longest reigning internet champion. Jason Masterson was right behind him. You've got DJK. Travis Johnson, I think, is already one of the best internet champions of all time.
Agreed.
And then you've got Kevin Ralston, who was the first internet champion. And then you've got the international champions, the greatest of all time. You got Jason Silva. You've got Cal, who's a 5-time international champion. You've got Judas Black. You've got Mr. Fresh. And then I'd probably say, to add a number 5 in there, I'd probably say the Masked Gentleman. So with that 5-on-5 scenario, who do you got?
Screw it, I'm going international title because it's got the freaking Masked Show Stealers in there, and I'm a sweaty mark for it. I don't freaking care. No, in all seriousness, if you do want to go if you want to go name value alone, you could probably say the internet championship. But if you want to go with the personal story behind it, and if you want to look back and look at the wars that were fought, I'm sticking with the international title.
There's definitely been a lot of great feuds for both titles. On the internet side, you've got Carson Callahan and Kent Von Eichenberg. You've got Desmond and DJK. You've got Masterson and Ralston. On the international championship side, you've got Masterson and Silva. You've got Cal beat everybody when he was an international champion. That was one of the most impressive runs that I've seen in my life. You've got Judas Black, who is one of the most popular stars. I mean, it's an impossible question to answer, but it's a super interesting question to ask. So we have to move on here from a tremendous week of action in BTW. I know there was a lot we kind of glossed over. We didn't talk about a whole lot. A lot of that's going to be addressed in our Q&A this week. So this is my favorite part of the show. Let's jump to that. So we had a question about King of the Hill. I'm honestly not sure what the card is looking like for King of the Hill at this point. It's still kind of coming together. But I will say, just to touch on that, King of the Hill is always, it's pretty much Rebellion and Levolution, that side of it, whatever you want to call it. That's probably the most anticipated pay-per-view for that side of it, just like Heatwave is for Devastation. So I don't know exactly how the card is going to stack up for King of the Hill just yet, but I know that we'll talk about it more when we do have more of a solid idea of the card, and it's going to be super fun to watch no matter what happens. So another question here, this one's from Taka, and we'll start with you, Ryan. In regards to the build-up for Locked and Loaded, which match do you think really stole the show at Locked and Loaded?
Oh, man. You might have to give me a minute on this one.
Okay.
Sorry.
I mean, I think the easy answer would be the main event.
Yeah, but that's the easy way out. And if I say that, no, screw the main event. No, main event was awful. Except for Desastation. It's Desastation now.
Desastation.
Hashtag Desastation. I mean, I really liked King of Fear and Mr. Fresh for the international title.
Right.
It was, I mean, yes, the ending was a little, but you had a return in RJ Grimm, and honestly, they went to war with each other. I think it was good. I mean, you can throw out Spike and Masterson because of just how brutal the match was and how personal it's getting. And once again, like you said, you can throw out the main event. I mean, honestly, I honestly think if you look at the card from top to bottom, and this isn't me trying to take an easy way out, if you say a match, I can honestly say it was probably a strong match. But if I had to go with the match that stole the show, screw it, the main event. I mean, it's just 4 guys trying to solidify a legacy.
Right. And I think as far as build-up, like you said, Masterson and Spike are right there. The main event, I mean, it's hard not to go with the main event because of the star power that was in it. But like you said, top to bottom, Locked and Loaded was a great card, and it was really fun to watch. So overall, this question comes from Devontae. Overall, with Devastation, Rebellion, Next Gen, whatever you want to say, right now, who would you say is working off of the most momentum? And let's not include the new World Heavyweight Champion Desmond, because once you capture that, you pretty much got all the momentum in the world. So let's go with somebody else.
Dang it. You took my answer.
Took my own answer. That would have been my first choice too.
I mean, can I stick with King of Fear? Like,
yeah.
I guess I'm gonna be the King of Fear mark for this podcast, for this episode. He's just, he has so much. Yes, he might have lost his match for the international championship. He lost that match, but at the same time, I'm not holding back. I'm not sleeping on. I'm gonna put pressure on him. King of Fear, if you're freaking listening, you better listen to me. You better give your next match 110%, because I'm putting all my chips on you, and you better go out there and you better win. And screw it, you better be the next freaking World Heavyweight Champion.
There you go.
All my chips are
all
on
my
King of Fear.
All
of my chips.
So I'd probably say the guy that beat King of Fear, Mr. Fresh, to kind of trump yours. Fresh came in. You know, he's a former World Heavyweight Champion, a Levolution World Heavyweight Champion. We already knew what Fresh was capable of, but he had a little bit of a reputation as someone with an attitude problem when he was on Levolution the first time. He came back fresh, no pun intended, and he showed everyone what he was made of. And now he went out there, he earned the international championship, and then he defended it against King of Fear. Not only that, he defended it in a last man standing match. So King of Fear and Mr. Fresh are both good choices. You're talking about Spike, who beat Masters, and you're talking about Regeneration X, who finally recaptured the tag team titles. There's a lot of people you could pick. Over on Rebellion, RJ Colbert, the Dark Savior, Mike Mayhem, all of those guys. But I think overall, I'm going to go with Mr. Fresh with the win at Locked and Loaded.
One more guy I want to bring up is the new Next Gen champion.
There we go.
Jordan Cash. Do not forget Next Gen, because like you said, if he just brushes up on a few things, if he just chips away at a few more things, he'll be awesome on the main roster. So Jordan Cash, I'm putting one chip on you. Sorry, King of Fear, but I'm putting one chip. I'm putting one chip on you just so I can say I have two guys in this race. So screw you.
Right, and then also the women's champion, Misbehavior. She ended the reign of Faith. And then she defeated a very game Sophia Schreiber, who was so upset about the loss she just couldn't be in BTW anymore. So you got to throw Miss B in that conversation as well. Question from Zach. We already have 4 matches announced for Heatwave 4 in Miami. We've got DC and J-Blaze. We've got Regeneration X versus the Hype Train. We've got the Fatal 4-Way for the women's title with Misbehavior, Faith, Ariana Lux, and Pandora Thorne. And the World Heavyweight Championship match between Desmond and his new number 1 contender, Will Wagner. So which match are you looking forward to the most as of right now with only 1 day of build-up?
With 1 day of build-up, if I had to choose a match right now to see, I would say DC versus J-Blaze, just because I'm so invested into what J-Blaze is trying to prove right here, because J-Blaze is one of the hardest workers in this profession right now. J-Blaze is one of the guys that I honestly think is underrated and needs this win, and so I know he's going to give it everything he's got. But if you also, so that's my pick. But I also, once again, love the Hype Train. I want to see Jason Silva throw another freaking fireball.
I'm probably going to agree with you, DC versus J-Blaze. It's good to see DC back in the first place, and it's good to see J-Blaze trying to make a name for his solo career in BTW, and you're right about that. So what about the state? A question from Will. What about the state of the tag team division? Because BTW's tag team division is kind of like the tide. It rises and it falls, and it rises and it falls. And right now, they're at a huge peak. They had the Icons and Assholes and the Hype Train and Regeneration X. And, you know, he's only talking about Devastation's tag team division. But over on Rebellion, we've also got Murphy and Ellis, and we've got the Machine Gun Club, and we've got Real Swagger. And so he's right. Devastation's and Rebellion's tag team divisions are really, really good right now. It was really bad for a long time, and before that it was really good for a long time. So let's hope that we can skip the valley and stay on the peak this time. But what are your thoughts overall on the tag team division for now?
like you said, the tag team division, it goes up and it goes down. And whenever it goes down, you almost, that's your bathroom break. And it's hard to say that, and I hate saying that any match is a bathroom break. But like you said, whenever it's at its lowest, it sucks. And seeing not only the division, but the titles get elevated to such a higher level. At one point in time, if you remember, those titles were in the main event, technically, whenever the Hype Train was teaming up with Kevin Ralston to face
Lethal Lockdown.
Tony and Blaze, back at Lethal Lockdown. And it's just, it doesn't get any bigger than a main event of a pay-per-view. And these titles have meant so much as of late that you have so many teams just going at them, and I love it. You got teams just coming out of the woodwork, and it's awesome to see a division, come alive again, because it's always nice to see just a certain title that's not only the world title, but just, the international title, the internet title, the women's title, and especially like you said, the tag titles be elevated to just another level. I love seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question, as we run out of time here, but we'll get through all of these questions that were asked up to this point. The next question is the best pay-per-view for us this year. I probably have to say Ultimate Uprising. That's when the Elimination Chamber happened, right?
Yes.
I think that probably had the most build-up. I mean, disqualifying this Grand Showcase, because the Grand Showcase is in a league all on its own. But sorry, Ryan, your answers suck.
Yes, they do.
As far as the build-up for every other pay-per-view this year, I just think that build-up for the Elimination Chamber match with Masterson, Silva, Ralston, and TB2 in particular, not to mention Big T and Kent Von Eichenberg being in the mix as well. I think that build-up was probably unmatched from any other build-up so far this year. It was super fun to watch, so I probably have to go with Ultimate Uprising.
Ultimate Uprising was good. I really enjoyed it, but just so I can go against you, I'm going to say Lethal Lockdown. Just because there was 4 guys trying to solidify their legacy, and then every other match, not necessarily beneath them, but on the rest of the card, everyone was gunning for something. So I'm going to go with Lethal Lockdown just so I can go against you.
Okay. So the next question we asked about the state of the tag team division. This question comes from Rain. What do you think of the women's division right now? Let me start that, Ryan, because I have a plus and a minus here with the women's division. Okay? First of all, I'm going to point out the obvious. There is a lot of great talent with the women's division right now. You start from the top with Miss Behavior, maybe the greatest female performer in BTW history. And then you work right down the list. You got Faith Kennedy. You got Ariana Lux, who spits gold every time she cuts a promo. You've got the returning Pandora Thorne. You've got Lacey Mist, who everyone seems to be super excited about. You've got Lexi. You had Sophia Schreiber, who was really good but couldn't take a loss, and now she's gone. So all in all, to say the obvious, the women's division is really healthy. However, Ryan,
yes,
when you're eating really good food, what happens? You feel good, right? If you eat too much good food, you get fat. You get miserable.
Correct.
There's not enough room for any more good food. And I think the main roster, and again, this is going to be a super unpopular opinion, especially for the ladies, and I don't mean to offend guys, but I'm just here to give my honest opinion. The main roster is overloaded. Like, when you say something is loaded, especially a main event scene or a women's scene, when you say it's loaded, that's a good thing. Overloaded is not a good thing, okay? I would hate really badly for the women's division to become oversaturated, but that is exactly what we are in danger of allowing to happen right now. I don't know what the resolution is. I don't know if you need to have a tournament. I don't know if you need to draw straws to decide who needs to go to Rebellion or Next Gen or whatever. But there are too many great talents on Devastation. There is 0.001% chance that every woman on Devastation right now is going to get the shine that they deserve. So before I pass it to you, Ryan, let me stress, I am impressed to hell with the work we're seeing from the women on Devastation, but there are too many of them, and the women's division is very, very shortly going to get oversaturated if we don't do anything about it.
Okay. I got kind of my answer to the question, and then I got a resolution I think we could talk about for a little bit, just in the short amount of time that we have. With the answer to the question is, like you said, there's so many great talents, and it's awesome. You know, I would rather be oversaturated than not have anyone at all. I mean, you know, it's like, oh, I have too much of a good thing right now, and it's awesome. But like you said, you know, it's in danger of, you know, maybe being slightly too much, but at the same time, if anything, it shows that these women need to work harder so that way they can shine even brighter than the people who are shining bright right now. My quote-unquote resolution, let's throw out a couple of ideas, okay? We have all of these women. What's one thing that we could do? You said something about throwing them to, not necessarily throwing them, but having a draft and you draft them over to Rebellion or Next Gen or something. Have we thought about maybe having like a 205 Live kind of thing with maybe a women's only show?
I mean, the pros of that are that every woman gets their shine. The negatives of that are we have Devastation on Monday, we've got Rebellion on Tuesday, we've got Primetime on Sunday. So, I mean, you do have that, and then you got Next Gen, and I'm going to be completely honest, I watch Next Gen recorded. I'm not actually certain when that's scheduled to come out every week. But basically, you've got Devastation, Rebellion, Primetime, and Next Gen already. That's already 4 shows. And when you're talking about a big company like WWE, they can do eight days a week of shows. When you've got an indie company basically in BTW, it is really hard to put out that many shows a week. So while it's a good idea, and I certainly would not throw it away immediately, I just don't see that as a viable option right now.
Another idea, and this is the last idea I truly have, is do you think you could include maybe, and I know we have so many of them already, do you think you could include maybe another title? Like, hear me out, like you say, not necessarily like a mid-card women's title, but maybe like a women's tag team division or something like that. And that title, let's just say it's women's tag team division. You could have that kind of a title, and if you needed it to, it could even float between Devastation and Rebellion.
See, now that's a two-part question. Because if it floats between the two brands, if we're splitting time on Rebellion, then fine. But you only have 6, maximum 7 matches a week on every show that we have room for on the card. So we're right back at the same problem of if you have 5 booked male matches, and I'm not saying that males should take precedence. That's not my opinion. That's just how wrestling works. If you don't like that, you need to reassess what you really know about wrestling, okay? Men's matches will always take precedence unless we have special events like we do to pay honor to our women, like we did with Vixen's show, or like Misbehavior and Faith Kennedy main evented, and that's fine. I'm talking about pure numbers. On a numbers ratio, it is always going to be a higher men's percentage of matches than women's. It's not because I think that's the way it should be. It's not because that's the way Ryan thinks it should be. It's just the way that it is. So now you're right back with the same problem unless you split. I think the only resolution is to immediately take half of the women that are currently on Devastation and move them to Rebellion. Because whether you have a separate women's championship or not, you are still dealing with the issue of most of the women's matches being on the pre-show. And we've already seen that people don't like to be on the pre-show for more than 1 week at a time, but that's what we're dealing with right now, is that women are always on the pre-show because there's just not enough room for them. So anyway, we spent a lot of time on that. Please have that conversation in the comments. Your opinion is just as valid as ours. Please leave your opinion in the comments if you think differently. We're happy to discuss it with you.
Oh yeah.
So, real quickly, we'll do this real quick. What do you think has been the feud of the year so far?
I don't know.
Let me give you my top 5 so far. Masterson versus Spike, right? The Hype Train versus the Big Homies.
Okay.
DJK versus Desmond. Right. Misbehavior versus Faith.
Ooh.
And the King of Fear versus Mr. Fresh.
Ooh.
And that's just on Devastation. And then on Rebellion, we've got RJ Colbert versus Gabriel Ortiz. We've got Dark Savior versus Ace. We've got Mike Mayhem versus Billy Matthews. So, out of those 8, which one do you think is the most impressive so far?
I mean, gotta stick with the guy who's got all my chips but one. King of Fear and on. But I might have to take that chip back and put it back on him.
I don't know. There's something that all my chips but one has a ring to it, kind of.
It's like suck my coin. Oh yeah, bring that.
Suck chip purse.
All my chips but one.
Oh god. So you're gonna go with King of Fear and Mr. Fresh.
I like that one, and then I also liked the Hype Train versus the Big Homies just because of the fact of how personal it got very, very quickly, because the seeds were even planted long before Jason Silva even lost that BTW championship. The seeds were planted with the hatred between the Big Homies and Silva, and TJ Shadows has never liked the Big Homies. And thus, like, that just had implications and just such a personal feel to it. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with King of Fear and Mr. Fresh.
So I'm probably gonna go with DJK versus Desmond. That rivalry just had everything. It had drama, it had hatred, it had comedy, it had intrigue and suspense, and then it had the great matches to boot. So,
Des TV.
I'm probably gonna go with Des versus DJK as my feud of the year so far. So this, so we need to stop very shortly, but we have 2 questions left. One of them I just really want to do, and the other is super important. So let's do a real quick hypothetical. If we were to do basically, this is from Aaron, and if we had to do a Survivor Series match between Devastation and Rebellion, what would our lineups for the 2 shows be right now?
Crap, you're gonna have me pick!
My lineups, and again, I guess I'm just a quicker thinker than you, Ryan, I don't know. My lineup...
Because you've been staring at this question for the past 3 hours. I don't want to hear this crap.
My lineups would probably be on either side. I'd probably pick a tag team from each side. My tag teams would probably be the Hype Train from Devastation, and the Big Homies from Levolution. On the Devastation side, I'd probably go with Desmond, Travis Johnson, and Jason Masterson. And then Jason Masterson, just because, I mean, to me, if there's any name on Devastation that's synonymous with Devastation, it's Jason Masterson. And then for Rebellion, along with the Big Homies, I'd probably go with RJ Colbert, Mike Mayhem, and the Dark Savior. Probably be my 5-on-5.
I can dig that. Wait, who's your team captains on each?
Team captains on each would probably, probably be the champions. RJ Colbert, the middleweight champion, and then Desmond, the world heavyweight champion. Shut up, Ryan. Suck on my coin purse.
All my chips.
All my chips but one. So here's
the
super important question. We're gonna leave on this because we're about, I guess we could probably say we're about at the halfway point of the year, right? It's probably a good time to call it that. And it's really important for us because obviously this whole thing started as an experiment because BTW went on hiatus and we came back not fully knowing if we were ready for it or if it was going to work out. So right now, as we are about, July, June,
August,
May, April, March, we're about 6 months removed from the Grand Showcase. We're about halfway through the year. How do you feel is the state of the product as a whole? And are you surprised by any rises or falls as far as people who may have stepped up or people who aren't doing as well as you thought they might?
Whenever, I gotta make this quick, I know we're short on time. Whenever BTW decided to go on hiatus, I remember sitting there thinking like, we're gonna lose everyone. We're not gonna have anyone come back and it's going to be 20 people at most if we're lucky. Looking at it now, looking back at it, it is so amazing to see because you had so many people just come out of the woodwork, just come out and say, listen, I'm here for BTW. And at Grand Showcase, you had Jason Silva versus Desmond for the BTW championship in the main event. And Jason Silva was determined to lead BTW because honestly, Jason Silva thought he was going to have to do it on his own. But you look at it now, No, he didn't. Everyone elevated up their game. You have Desmond, you have Travis Johnson, King of Fear, all of my chips but one. You have so many people stepping up their game. You have BTW bringing in Rebellion, bringing in Next Gen. You have 3 shows, a 4th if you count Primetime, but you have 3 different rosters, and all of them are performing on a high level. And BTW honestly could not be any better right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that we've done as well as we did. I think we've gotten to a point, like we discussed earlier, where we're oversaturated with talent, which that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that we have to work with and we have to adjust. But as you stated, and it was the perfect way of putting it, I'd rather be oversaturated with talent than undersaturated. And BTW as a whole is doing a lot better than I thought we would be at this point. The top names are different than I thought we would be.
Definitely.
I think
but that's a good thing.
Exactly. Guys like Desmond, guys like Mike Mayhem, who came out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to think of where we were when we started, how unsure we were, and now it's like, I couldn't imagine BTW being anywhere where it is now. So.
Exactly.
All right. So, guys, that wraps up the Q&A. Ryan, was there anything at all that you think we may have glossed over, or anything you'd like to talk about before we get out of here?
Just to recap. Moving Day, starring DJK and Jason Silva. Straight to DVD. It's going to come out whenever I say it does. You've been a bunch of sweaty, filthy marks. Thank you for tuning into the BTW podcast. King of Fear, step it up. All of my chips but one. I have been Adam Ryan. Over to you, Jade.
So for Adam Ryan, my name is Jade Lowe. Again, thank you for joining us on the returning BTW podcast. Before any of you ask, I don't know if we're going to be back permanently. I don't know if we're even going to be back next week. We'll see what the response is, and we'll see what mine and Ryan's and Brandon's schedules look like next week. And then if we have time to bring it back, absolutely, we'll keep it going. So for Ryan, I've been Jade. Thank you for listening to the BTW podcast, and we'll see you when we see you. Have a good one.
Away!